Hola, bonjour, hello. My name is David Petrasic. I teach international human rights law at the University of Ottawa in Canada. I used to work with Amnesty International and also with the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. I hope you're enjoying your colloquium so far. I've been asked to comment briefly on the question of whether countries with a problematic human rights record at home are still able to raise concerns through their foreign policy about respect for human rights in other countries. This is the problem of a perceived inconsistency. How can Brazil, for example, raise concerns about caste discrimination in India or the treatment of migrants in Europe when its own record as regards Brazilians of African descent leaves so much to be desired? Or how can India complain about human rights abuses in the civil war in Sri Lanka when allegations of similar abuses are raised about the war it is fighting in Kashmir? Do such inconsistencies mean, as new powers emerge on the world stage, there will be less global attention to human rights? The first answer to the question is to state the obvious. The old powers hardly have perfect human rights records. We can debate the details, but countries like the United States, Britain, France, even my own country, Canada, have numerous laws and policies, even to this day, which UN human rights bodies have criticized. Some of this criticism concerns very serious human rights abuses, including torture, arbitrary detention, and systematic discrimination. Yet this hasn't prevented such countries from speaking up about human rights abuse abroad. No doubt, to the extent that those they criticize can claim hypocrisy or double standards, their appeals might be rendered less effective. But it hasn't prevented them from pointing fingers. Now, a country with a very good human rights record is obviously in a better position to criticize others. But just as with the old powers, their record on human rights won't stop the new powers from sometimes being critical. Having said that, there might be other reasons why new powers shy away from pointing fingers. New and emerging powers may be less inclined to pursue country-specific approaches because of their greater attachment to sovereignty and non-interference norms. And this is based in their colonial experience. They will likely prefer UN processes that are non-confrontational and universal in nature, that is, that don't single out an individual country but require all countries to go through the same review process, for example, like the Universal Periodic Review at the UN Human Rights Council. Is this a bad thing? It might be, especially if the new powers shy away from public criticism or voting for appropriate action when human rights are being abused on a massive scale, as in Syria today. But who says that in less extreme cases, the old model of country-specific complaints is or was effective? Speaking out is one thing, but forcing a change in another country's policy as regards human rights usually requires a carrot to go with the stick. In the past, Western pressure only really worked where the countries being criticized depended on the aid, trade, or military relationships the West offered, and where the West was prepared to withhold those advantages until the human rights situation improved. The same will be true of the new powers. However, as they generally do not like using this kind of conditionality, their public criticism may achieve little. So, to summarize, inconsistency is not the main problem. There are other reasons why new powers may be less inclined to criticize human rights abuses in other countries. What, therefore, can advocates in the emerging powers do to promote an effective human rights foreign policy by their governments? Well, country-specific criticism and the conditionality needed to make it effective is not the only or even the most effective way to bring about change. I'm going to offer 4 suggestions. First, focus efforts on processes like the Universal Periodic Review that are perceived as non-selective and non-confrontational. These processes have been criticized for being ineffective, but they're still in their infancy and much could be done to improve them. Second, focus on lobbying your government to work thematically, that is, to strengthen international law and international institutions to deal non-selectively with important human rights issues. Middle powers in the developing world, and some of the BRICS countries included, have already played a major role in standard setting and could do more. Third, demand country-specific action, public criticism, only in the most serious cases, like Syria and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and think hard about the levers that your country might apply to make this public criticism effective. Fourth, and finally, dialogue. Many northern countries have, vis-a-vis some other countries, engaged in human rights dialogues. For example, this is the approach that many European countries use in regards to China. South-South dialogue on human rights has barely begun and could be an extremely effective tool for advancing understanding of and respect for human rights. For example, the Latin American countries are very supportive of the International Criminal Court and have ratified its statute. Many African countries have also ratified the statute, but in recent years have been very critical of the court. Why could Brazil not, for example, initiate a dialogue between Latin American and African countries about the importance of the International Criminal Court and ways to make it more effective? Those are 4 suggestions. I'm sure you'll think of others. Thank you.